Hello, and welcome to this episode of AMA's Marketing In. I'm your host, AMA CEO Bennie F. Johnson. During our episodes, we look at life and unexpected moments that are influenced by marketing. We have an opportunity to talk with guests who are marketing innovators and leaders who you might not yet have heard of, but are exactly the ones you need to know. Through our thought-provoking conversations, we're going to explore this intersection of life and the unexpected. So in continuing our New York-themed conversations, I'm delighted to have a new friend, Fernando Romero. He is SVP of U.S. Digital Advertising and Sales at the world's leading Spanish language media company. It's in his role that he leads the national advertising sales revenue for the company's digital, streaming, and branded social work, along with its experimental digital and audio properties. In his space, he has been a highly dynamic and respected leader with more than 30 years. There's no way you have 30 years of experience, my friend.
30 years.
We're going to break the intro to say that. There's no way you have 30 years of experience, but he does. And he's a passionate thought leader who I'm honored is joining us today across various media ecosystems and innovative multimedia channels and marketing, with experience in integrated advertising strategy as he scales revenue across multiple lines. And it's the work that he's done in, we talked before, every key moment of media change over the past 30 years you've been a part of. So my friend, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Benny. I'm proud to be here.
So we started talking about the early days of internet.
Yep.
And not so much that we were reminiscing, but it was really more of seeing these moments where today feels like there's some big things happening. Talk to me about how you felt when you first started working in those early days of internet advertising. What was the feeling you had?
Oh, man. Well, that was back in the day of AOL, CD-ROM startups, and their little running man to get 500 hours of a free internet with a modem and a dial-up that cut into your phone. So when I was home, I had to actually clog the line for about an hour or two if I wanted to surf the internet. But I was fortunate enough to jump into to digital media back in 1996. And I had to really kind of understand what WWW stood for.
Right.
Which is the World Wide Web, educate folks on why they needed to be online, get folks to kind of envision the fact that at some point somebody would take an online class or buy a car over the internet or spend any money or put your personal data on or transact over mediums that did not include a phone or a dial-up or a fax at that time. So it was one of those things that just curiosity took over. And I think we spoke about that. You know, the fear of failure, just try to understand the new business model for me just was fascinating and interesting at the same time. So I've been really fortunate to kind of still be riding that wave 30 years later, trying to figure out whatever this internet, where are we, 5.0 at this time.
I think we stopped counting at this point.
I think we stopped counting. Even the whole concept of digital, I think it's integrated into the fabric of who we are and everything that we do today. So one of the things that we do at TelevisaUnivision is also try to understand just how consumers are engaging with content, trying not to make it so siloed, but just obviously having a center of excellence to understand how digital really plays a big part in our everyday lives. So it's been fascinating, but I've been really enjoying the ride.
So talk a bit about the kind of recent evolution, because we look at kind of this acceleration of content. The last 5 years have been incredible when you think about your space and streaming and the platforms.
It really has. And look, that started again with just the whole really world being wired for internet and connectivity, which I think, you know, some of the past guests have talked about. The acceleration of which this is happening is really catching us all a little bit off guard, understanding that within our palm of our hands, we have a camera, a recording device, a CD player or music player, back in the day, a supercomputer. So from a marketing lens, it's been also trying to work with advertising partners as well as media companies to kind of help them understand how that drives value. I know one of your previous guests were talking about the fact that, you know, with the ad market kind of shifting and dollars follow eyeballs. So as the eyeballs keep on shifting and creators keep on, coming on, they're independent media brands themselves. So, and there's influence that happens, but there's also authenticity. So we talk a lot about that with our brand. And, one of the main reasons that the mission of our company is really about empowering, educating, and entertaining. The voice of Latinos and representation plays a big part of that, and inclusion plays a big part of that. But that's just accelerated over the last 5 years. So it's really about understanding how everybody in today's world is engaging with content, and where, again, the impact gets made, and how, those folks that are coming in and studying marketing in college really kind of have to understand their place, and how technology is going to continue to be a big part of marketing.
So we talk a bit about audience, and your work is particular because of the specificity of the audience in the space and air. And what I was looking through as we were sitting here, I wanted to make sure that I had the number correct. So a recent report just came out on U.S. economic data. $3.6 trillion. That is the U.S. Latino economy impact and growth.
Yep.
And kind of having the actual economic data to show what we've talked about, what we've experienced, what we've lived, what we know, the kind of growth of the U.S. Latino and Hispanic population. Talk a bit about what you've seen in your work with these kind of economic rises and opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that we champion, right? It's the voice of the fact that it's the fastest growing economy within the U.S. economy. If you were to take it outside of itself, it's the 5th largest GDP in the world. The fact that it now represents 20% of the U.S. population, with about 65, 67 million folks and households, and it's only going to continue to grow. Latinos have a larger household with about 3, on an average of 3. They're consuming goods faster. They are on mobile devices faster. Their adoption rates for technology is accelerating.
It's through the roof, right?
It's through the roof. So it's really just about, again, harnessing them as a consumer, but also being authentic, right? Especially as we enter into Hispanic Heritage Month, right? And you see all those advertisers that want to kind of jump on board and kind of champion Latinos for this month. We actually work a lot with our advertisers to say this is the exact opposite of what you want to do. You want to show up, all year round.
Could you say that again? We need that in the podcast just again to say, right, it's the exact opposite way to...
It's the exact opposite of what you want to do, right? You don't want to show up in those moments just because it's beneficial. Again, we talk about authenticity of audiences. We talk about how the Gen Alphas really kind of want to work with brands and support brands that are authentic to a mission. So they can smell inauthenticity, and again, talk about how creators have played a big part of that, because that was really an impetus. They wanted to work with brands that they trust because my friend Bennie told me about it. Right. And I'm going to listen to you faster than I would be a multinational advertiser that's spending a lot of glitz and glam to try to get me to buy a $5.99 product.
Maybe you've seen this, or I would love it if you have. Have you had moments where there are brands that you didn't think were really aligned with community, but then you end up finding out that they have a real authentic voice?
Yeah, I mean, community plays a big part. And again, shout out to WNYC on the 100 years of community service, because that's obviously a big part of what we do as well. We have a local arm that talks about the impact, especially of Latinos in communities in need, right, of going out. Again, let's talk about voting and the importance of voting and voter registration, and understanding the elements that are going to impact their day-to-day lives as being Americans as well. That's a big part of what we want to work with advertisers, to understand what are those community initiatives that you also want to take into account. P&G is a big advertiser that talks about giving back in community service, employment. What do the employment numbers look like? What are the diversity, the issues that we're seeing now, in Springfield, and the fact that those Haitian Americans are under unfortunate attacks, but the fact that they make up 20% of the workforce or the labor force in certain businesses there, that's real. And that's something that I think as a marketing community and an advertising community, especially as TelevisaUnivision, we want to make sure that we educate, we elevate those conversations, but we also like to have some fun along the way. So I don't want to keep it all serious.
Right. We have fun along the way. I'm curious as to the mix that you end up with advertising. Like, we know the big brands show up. So Procter & Gamble and Colgate and Coke and Pepsi. But where are there opportunities for smaller brands that want to be able to engage with you and the platform?
Yeah, so we look at it from a bunch of different lenses, right? Obviously, what are the categories that are going to make sense, that are going to, again, I don't want to say target, but we will see an impact of consumer base, whether it's going to be more mobile driven or more social driven brands. A lot of direct to consumer brands start from a digital lens, but also start with our audiences because they're looking for that accelerated adoption rate that's going to happen. We talked about, online education as a big factor because, again, that's something that they might want to lean into because it goes back to what their ethos is, that they want to educate themselves to have a better life, to provide better for them. So we've seen online education as being a big category that has jumped in. Finance as well, again, because there's a mistrust and perception from traditional banking and financing. So we see a lot of finance apps that start in our ecosystem that kind of want to just help education on savings or finance. So we do work with brands that, again, want to come to us and have a better understanding of how they can lean in. Again, understand those cultural nuances, understand the benefits of working with a company like ours to put them in that positive light and representation, and also keep what we say, keep a pulse on the trends. When we talk about cultura, when you talk about, again, yesterday's Emmys, right? You talk about the diversity of what you saw in programming. It's all those things. So I really love my job because of all those factors.
Well, we're going to talk about something else you love, New York.
Oh, yeah.
So talk about what Stony Brook has meant to you.
Stony Brook. So being born and raised here, a proud Ecuadorian American, first generation going out to college. I was the first one to leave my house. I'm the youngest of three. My brother went to St. John, so he stayed local and had to work his way through. My sister did the same, but she went down the Pace, just right down here. But again, same kind of concept. And as the baby, I was the privileged one to go out 90 miles away out to SUNY Stony Brook. But it was about getting that exposure that was a little bit different than staying within the city. It was about being exposed to different classes, different type of people out there, out in Long Island, a huge international student body because a lot of folks came over for the sciences as well to have a great medical and science program. So it's been great. It's been life-changing, obviously, to see me go through that and obviously be here on stage with you and having to talk about the impact of that. And all while staying 100-mile radius here and just still living in New York and raising my kids in New York is great.
So what do you think the greatest gift is living in New York?
Oh, man, I think it's the cultural diversity. I think that whole concept of being a melting pot, we don't have those, I would say integration was maybe a little bit different when my folks were coming up here in the mid 60s. But, having been born and raised here, I went to an all boys Catholic high school. Some of my best buddies are Irish, Italian, Black, Latinos, and we didn't see ourselves anything different. We were just boys. We were just fraternity or brotherhood that we still talk about a lot. And I think, we were all united by the same thing, especially about education and having a good time. And we were able to go to 42nd Street and have an experience, go down to the Village for a different experience, take a train out to Coney Island and have a whole different world. And it was great. I wish our generation could still have some of that, and all of that without a phone.
So wait a minute, you didn't have a phone?
I didn't have phones. I carried a lot of dimes and quarters to make those phone calls when I needed to check in.
I have that conversation with my kids all the time. We didn't have a phone. You didn't have a phone?
I still say tokens for some reason. People don't understand what tokens are.
We can edit that out.
We can edit that out. Don't age me, please.
For tokens. Well, you know what? I am going to talk about not just age, but with that comes wisdom, stewardship, and contribution. You're also on the board for IAB's video standards. And, you help to really shape an industry, but then serving in that space in which you're shaping the policies and standards for digital video. Talk a bit about what that role has meant and the impact that you're able to have.
Yeah, from my lens, again, talk about the evolution of digital video and data. Data integrity becomes a big part of it. Everybody wants to target. If you notice, we have to be really selective, obviously, on who we target, right? We need to talk about inclusivity. We talk about protective classes. So serving on that board gives me a voice to make sure that I'm keeping that lens. Because again, everybody wants to commoditize an eyeball, but just because an algorithm says it's the right message to deliver at the right person doesn't make it right. So we talk a lot about being in culture and in language, and we talk about messaging and how we can work with advertisers to deliver the right message. But I take some of that same standard to the IAB to making sure that, again, we keep ourselves in check. There's a lot of nefarious business that happens when you start introducing a lot of these middlemen in the digital world, and you don't know where you're really operating under, or who's being targeted, or what the right appropriate ads are. So it's a very complex world, but I'm proud to be serving on that board.
A little bit of future vision here, as you're able to kind of help coach people and lead them through the best ways to take advantage of our newest technologies. What do you think advertising is going to look like for you in 5 years?
Wow, great question. I wish I had the crystal ball for that, but
it's okay. You can be 100% wrong. We're okay
that's true. We're not going to go back and check this tape out. See, notice how I said tape and not record? It's just those old
Once
old
again,
things.
we can edit these out if you need to, my friend.
Yeah, all these old adages.
But it's okay because we also talked about wisdom and experience.
True. So sometimes you need to reflect to go forward. I think authenticity, regardless of the way you're going to be delivering the message, is going to be key and important. Again, we talk about the importance of culture and understanding culture and that message, or whichever way it's being delivered. I think interpersonal connection and making sure that you deliver a message that's going to resonate with somebody is going to be important. It's, the one-to-many or the one-to-one messaging that's going to be delivered. I think audio is still going to be a big part of that, sight, sound, and motion. I think experiential will still be a big part of it because people want to touch and feel and be a part of a community and a culture of experiences. So sky's the limit. What I would love is maybe if we weren't so data-driven and so analytical on everything, and just sometimes good old advertising is meant to deliver an emotion. I want to make sure that stays true.
Well, we said at the beginning, we're going to be serious, we're going to be analytical, but we're going to have a little bit of fun.
CCC.
So what challenge do you have as we close out for our marketers to really support, enhance, and engage with this incredibly fast-growing Latino economy?
Just take the first step. You're never going to get it right, but the more you learn and be iterative and lean in. We work with a lot of marketers that have the right thought, but they just don't know how to take that first step. And we always want to be that partner to help them take that first step. Understand the cultural importance of what you're seeing in one of the fastest growing economies here, and really kind of lean into the culture. You saw it with soccer here. Copa America was huge here. The Euro Cup actually having Spain as one of the finalists. So you had Spain, you had Colombia, you had Argentina, and then you had England, right? So you had 3 out of the 4 Spanish-speaking countries. Just enjoy it. Again, you're not going to get it right, but it's iterative. So just take the first step.
I think that's a great way to close. Be authentic, take the first step, and we'll get it right.
CCC.
So thank you, my friend and brother, for joining me. Thank you all for being a part of this episode of AMA's Marketing In. I'm your host, Bennie F. Johnson. As we think about the future, know that the future is dynamic and grows, and community is important. Thank you.